Hello, this is Garrett King, continuing the series of videos on programming in Microsoft Excel VBA, or Visual Basic for Applications. We're going to look at one today, which is to read in data from a text file. Text file in particular is the one in the handout. If you open it up here, it has 4 names and 4 corresponding marks. The names are strings closed in quotation marks to delimit the start and end of the name on the string, and then a comma, and then an integer for the result. So in this particular case there are 4 records in the file, a record being the name and the result. But when we design a program, we want to design it in such a way that it is able to read in a file with any number of records in it, and we need some mechanism so that VBA will know when it gets to the end of the file. So what VBA actually has is a function called EOF, or end of file, and that's the one we're going to use. That will tell us that will tell VBA when it's got to the end of the file. I'll go now to the code and we'll start doing the code. So with the same module that we did in the previous 2 examples, I will call this subroutine read in file. It automatically opens up nsub. I'll dimension name as a string. Just put a bit of space, tidy it up, and I'll open the input file. So I'll open, I have it in the directory c.vba.marks.text, so that's the file we were just looking at. For input as hash1, so I give the file name and file number 1, and then we open up the do loop. We loop until EOF1. So what this does is, if I just put in the other 2 commands, input hash1 name result, and these are separated with commas, spell it right, and the other one is message box name, use an ampersand to make up the string, and we'll have result, and ampersand result. So that'll pop up a message box every time it reads in a new record. And the last thing I need to do is close the file before you finish. So that's our little subroutine, not much in it, but if we go through line by line, F8, variable not defined, so I've got to do result as an integer. So now if I go through it line by line, it opens the file. If it doesn't come up an error here, it's opened the file successfully. It comes into the do loop, input from file number 1, so that's this file up here because we open it up as hash1, the name and the result. So then it will take this name and it will say name as a string, the name of the person, and a space, and then the result and the mark. So let's see if it works. Yes, it pops it up there, name Joe Bloggs, result 23. Okay. Now what happens here is end of file is a function within VBA. It goes to this file that we're reading in from, hash1, because you can see you give the file number 1 in the name there, and it says it's reading in sequentially from the top of the file, so we've read in the first line, and the pointer is now at the beginning of the second line. So it hasn't reached the end of the file, therefore this returns it's a boolean function, and it's returned false. So we will only loop until this function, we will stay within the loop, we will keep looping until this function is true. So if we come F8, it goes back and it reads in the second record, it pops it up there, Mary Tobin, result 47. We know there's 4 records in there, so we've only read in 2, so end of file 1 will return false, so we will keep looping. We read in the 3rd record, name Jack Smart, result 76, okay, and we read in the 4th record, because end of file is still returning false, and now we have Carol Cracker, result 80. Now at this point we should have an end of file End of file 1 should return true. So I press enter and you can see that we've read in the 4 records. So this time end of file 1 returns a Boolean value of true. So remember, do loop until will keep going on inside that loop until it meets a condition that is true. Then we close the file and we close it like so. So that's an example of how you read in from an input file. Okay, thank you for listening.